अगर आपको सच्ची में गाय की परवाह है तो आप डेयरी ना कंज्यूम करें.
ठीक है, हम दूध पीना बंद कर देते हैं, नो प्रॉब्लम. बट देन जो सब गाय हैं वो जाएंगे कहाँ पे? सो वी कांट जस्ट से डेयरी खराब है, इट्स टेरिबल, स्टॉप यूजिंग इट. What can we do to ensure that the livelihoods of the farmers and the welfare of the animals make sense?
That's
Explain this to me. जब लोग कहते हैं कि ओ आप दूध ना पियो और ना पीने से इतना सारा पानी बच रहा है, इतना सारा लैंड बच रहा है, लेकिन ये कैसे बच रहा है?
तो ये interesting सवाल है, right? If we do not address the sharp increase in the demand for animal-based products, there is no way any system can incorporate for the well-being of these animals.
Sometimes though you'll come across vegans who do have a position of it's all or nothing.
Yeah, it's not a fair dialogue to say abolish completely. Animal protection organizations are not necessarily attacking livelihoods. There has to be a way where bringing the humans and the animals into the same conversation.
Yeah.
Looking at it ecosystemically and seeing how we can take that forward.
Yeah.
And then putting those voices out to the policymakers.
Hey guys, welcome to Kindness with Amy. Today I'm joined by Shreya Swaminath, who is the Director of Farmed Animal Protection for the Humane Society International, India. Their sole purpose as an organization is to help animals and create a more compassionate and sustainable world. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining, Shreya. I'm really glad you were able to be here today. I've been watching what Humane Society International India do, and you guys do amazing work at creating a kinder world. And I wanted to ask you actually, because as an everyday person who, you know, we see all these campaigns from organizations and charities who are doing all these different things for animals. Now, one thing that my friends often say to me is ki, you know, oh, you're giving money to these organizations, you know, we don't know where the money goes, like, do they even do anything, blah, blah, blah. So I just wanted to know if an everyday person like me is supporting Humane Society International India, what is the organization doing to help animals on a day-to-day basis?
I love this question. So maybe we'll roll back for a second. When most of us think about giving to animal protection organizations or animal-based charities, what's the first image that comes to our mind?
I don't know.
Dogs, cats,
Yeah,
shelters.
dogs. I was thinking panda. I just immediately thought of
Panda.
WWF.
Panda, great.
A panda.
Panda.
Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah.
I know a lot of my friends always used to think that it's shelter work.
Yeah.
It's rescuing dogs, cats, rehabilitating them.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic work. And that's a lot of the animal protection work.
Yeah.
But there's so much more going on in the animal protection space. And there's so many intersectionalities between humans and animals. And HSI is there. So we work for wildlife. Not necessarily pandas because we don't have them here. But we work for wild animals here in India. We work for farmed animals. We work for companion animals and street dogs and cats. We work not only for the different animals that we have intersectionalities with as society, but also with different agencies that we would require to influence how we get to approach these animals or work with these animals. So we work with government, we work with business, we work with educational institutions, we work with corporate houses, F&B, we work with everyday consumers and everyday individuals. We also work with communities that are living around wildlife areas. We work with communities that are coexisting with street animals and have issues. And what we really try to do with our programs is we try to support all animals and create interventions that can be systemic and that can show systemic impact for these animals coexisting with us and being in our ecosystems in a way that, you know, promotes for their welfare and promotes for their well-being. So we are, that's what we try to do, at least here in India. And what we try to bring is, we are a global organization, and what we try to bring is the local flavor to the animal protection work.
I see.
What can we do as a global organization that has access to these experts from across the globe and that has access to local pioneers of the animal protection movement to really bring these two aspects together to create the most impact for animals systemically.
That's fantastic. So you guys are looking at it on multiple different fronts for creating change for animals and the planet.
Absolutely. We go at it from all fronts possible and try to make the most change.
That's interesting about what you just mentioned from a systematic point of view, because what we were discussing earlier around implementing change in a system, especially in India, when we talk about the use of animals in animal agriculture, immediately when we talk about, for example, becoming plant-based and considering not drinking milk and having millet milk or oat milk instead, straight away we'll have people say to us that, we're anti-farmers and this is the Indian culture and, we're going against all these things. But it's so important that if you're saying that, okay, dairy is cruel, it's not an efficient use of resources. It's not the best way for us to, as a species now, to keep going. There are better options out there. We do still need to supply solutions.
Yeah.
So we can't just say, dairy kharab hai, it's terrible, stop using it. We need to say dairy kharab hai, yes, but what can we do to improve the system realistically over the next 10, 20, 50 years that are actually realistic, to ensure that the livelihoods of the farmers and the welfare of the animals makes sense.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because that's something that we've been thinking about as well. How do we bring together the intersectionalities that are inherent when it comes to raising animals and when it comes to consuming animals? Where do the intersectionalities lie? So the big intersectionalities that are really relevant for the Indian context for us is the environment and livelihoods, and of course caste, right? If you look at how the human angle really plays out when it comes to rearing animals in India, I think that's where you have a really impactful and powerful lens that you can use and insights that you can bring to really create change. And while we are an animal protection organization, we do understand that animals don't exist in the void. Right? They are constantly interacting with human systems and human beings, and we need to look at it within the framework of those systems if we need to create sustainable systemic change. So while we do say reduce your dairy or stop your dairy consumption, we also say that it's a step-by-step process. Okay, the best thing that maybe you could possibly do is for animals is to not consume at all. Can everybody do that? Possibly not. Is that an accessible solution for everyone when it comes to access to nutrition? Possibly not. There are last mile communities that are intrinsically dependent on their animals for not just economic benefits, but also for nutrition. It's not a fair dialogue to say abolish completely. So we need to think about this from a framework that brings the people into the conversations and that presents these solutions. Now, what these solutions could be is you could just start by saying, I'm going to drink less milk. I buy 5 liters a month. Maybe this month I buy 4. That's a great way to start. I buy 2 dozen eggs a week. This week I'll manage with 1. And let's see where that goes.
Exactly.
And supposing I decide that, okay, I no longer want to consume, but again, I feel like there's like a void in my life because I used to love my chai, and with my doodh and all of that. What can I do? There is an ecosystem of alternatives that we are working on. So the Humane Society International India also has a program that we call the Humane Entrepreneurship program that works with entrepreneurs in the food space to bolster the access of these alternatives to the ecosystem. So we're saying if you want to reduce your dairy but you still want doodh wali chai, here's almond milk, here's oat milk, here's millet milk. Try it. It may taste slightly different, but it's not inaccessible. You have the opportunity to try and fill that void. In the same way, if you decide that you want to reduce your meat consumption, but you miss the taste of meat or the flavor of meat or the kind of memories that you had with meat. Go for plant-based meats. They're trying to do the same thing. And I know that, these products aren't perfect, and these, there's a lot of pushback on when it comes to the taste, the texture. But I think these products stand on their own, right? As much as they are a replacement, but they are also using completely different ingredients, and you're making them in a completely different way. So you possibly have to make them your own in a different way. You're not going to be able to use them exactly like how you would use dairy because its composition is fundamentally different. But I think that if you try to look at that as steps, right? I can reduce, I can replace. And supposing I don't want to do either, like I want to have meat and I want to have eggs, then what do you do? In that case, you can refine. You can refine the way you consume these products.
Absolutely. And, I used to have the position that a very strong abolitionist position myself, especially when you first go vegan. You want to kill everybody and you hate everyone. I still hate most people. No, I'm just kidding. But I've learned over the time that you have to have a more realist approach because most people are not going to go vegan. It doesn't matter from what angle we look at things. Most people don't give a shit. And that's what I've learned. That's just the bottom line of our species with anything. And so how do you work within that framework? So we have to look at things for what they are, and we have to improve what there is and encourage people where possible to be vegan, opt for plant-based, talk about the common sense, the logic, the health, the environment, all of those things. But we also have to be realistic that isn't always going to resonate with most people for a multitude of reasons. And something you were saying just now about reducing the impact of that, I just actually had gotten this crazy fact before that switching out cow's milk once a day saves up to 229 kilos of carbon over the course of a year, while giving up a weekly portion of cheese saves emissions equivalent to heating the average UK home for 11 days. Isn't that crazy?
It is. It is. The impact of reducing your consumption of animal-based products has been extensively documented and recorded over the past, for many, many years now. And I think it is the argument you choose to accept for yourself. What allows you to sleep at night, right? If you think that your cup of tea doesn't make a difference, or not a lot of people have steak dinners here in India, but if you're like, chicken biryani doesn't make a difference, it does. It's just the argument that you choose to accept. There is so much science out there that talks to us about how much as individuals we can contribute to reducing our impact on the environment. But then if you feel like as an individual your contribution might be too less, there's still something you can do. Go to your institutions, go to your hotels, go to your F&B chains, tell them, ask them to do better, ask them to swap out things in their supply chains, ask them to start incorporating egg alternatives, dairy alternatives. There's so many out there that are being locally produced here in India right now. Petition to them if you want to create something larger, and that could have significant impact on your emissions. So it's really how you choose to look at action. And I think action is possible everywhere. It's how you choose to look at it and what you feel like is within your power to do.
Shreya, अगर कोई vegan बन जाए 1 महीने के लिए, तो उसका क्या impact होगा?
तो अलग अलग जगहों पे हमको अलग अलग फिगर्स दिखते हैं. तो कभी कभी हम लोग को लगता है ये लोग क्या बात कर रहे हैं. टेनिस कोर्ट बच जाएंगे, फुटबॉल कोर्ट बच जाएंगे. कौन बचा रहा है ये टेनिस कोर्ट, फुटबॉल कोर्ट? पर सच्चाई ये है कि साइंस ने क्वांटिफाई किया है इन चीज़ों को, साइंस ने मेजर किया है इन चीज़ों को कि अगर हम स्पेसिफिकली मीट, एग्स और डेयरी हम अपना कम करते हैं तो हम एनवायरनमेंट को सब्सटैंशियली बेनिफिट कर सकते हैं। HSI इंडिया खुद के मेट्रिक्स रन करता है और हम मील ट्रांजिशन प्रोग्राम्स करते हैं इंस्टीट्यूशंस के साथ अक्रॉस द कंट्री। हम इंस्टीट्यूशंस को एनकरेज करते हैं कि आप अपना जो भी एनिमल बेस्ड प्रोक्योरमेंट है आप वो कम करिए, ताकि आप एनिमल्स के लिए ही नहीं, एनवायरनमेंट के लिए, लोगों के लिए एक बेटर वर्ल्ड क्रिएट कर रहे हैं। आप फ्यूचर के लीडर्स को जेनरेट कर रहे हैं, एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशन स्पेसिफिकली। तो आप क्या ऐसी स्टेप ले सकते हैं जो ये लीडर्स को फ्यूचर के लिए प्रिपेयर करता है? आपको एनवायरनमेंट के लिए सोचना पड़ेगा, ताकि जो छात्र आपके साथ पढ़ रहे हैं वो आगे जाके एनवायरनमेंट के लिए लीडरशिप दिखा सके। तो उसमें हमारी ये प्लांट बेस्ड कमिटमेंट्स आ जाती है। और हमने काफ़ी सालों से हम ये प्लांट बेस्ड कमिटमेंट्स रन कर रहे हैं, और हमने देखा है कि द डेटा एक्चुअली टेल्स अस कि फॉर एग्जांपल सिर्फ हम डेयरी लेते हैं, ठीक है, बाकी सब छोड़ दीजिए, हम सिर्फ डेयरी लेते हैं। अगर हम ओवरऑल 12,000 लीटर डेयरी बचाते हैं, तो दैट इज, इवन इफ यू लुक एट इट एज 1,000 liters a month, ठीक है, यू कैन सेव land equivalent to 1 lakh square meters.
So break that down with me as an individual. Like if I stop having dairy, for example, what does that translate to?
तो if your dairy consumption, अगर आपका dairy consumption है, हम लोग दिन में 1-2 लीटर सब मंगाते होंगे,
आराम से,
सबके घर पे वो पैकेट आती है, तो दैट इज 60 liters, ठीक है। हम बात कर रहे हैं 12,000 की, तो दैट इज बाय 60 हुआ 2, ओके, सो वी आर लुकिंग एट अ 1/2000 kind of range. So if you're looking at one, you will be able to save 500 meter square of land per month if you are able to go swap out all your dairy. Doodh. Just your doodh.
Okay. Explain this to me. Because when we talk about saving land by not having dairy, what the hell does that mean?
What? हाँ, वो quotes कहाँ से आ रहे हैं? Where are the tennis quotes coming?
मतलब हाँ, जब लोग कहते हैं कि आप दूध ना पियो और ना पीने से इतना सारा पानी बच रहा है, इतना सारा लैंड बच रहा है, लेकिन ये कैसे बच रहा है?
कैसे बच रहा है?
हाँ।
तो ये इंटरेस्टिंग सवाल है, राइट? हमारा डेयरी आ कहाँ से रहा है? कहाँ से आ रहा है हमारा डेयरी?
गाय से, बफलो से।
गाय, राइट? ये गाय को रखने के लिए हमको जगह चाहिए। तो हम अगर अपना डेयरी का कंजम्पशन, इफ आवर पॉपुलेशन इज गोइंग ऑन इंक्रीजिंग, हमारी डेयरी कंजम्पशन इज गोइंग ऑन इंक्रीजिंग, तो अगर पहले हमको 50 गाय रखने थे, आज हमको 100 रखने, आज हमको 300 रखने, आज हमको 400 रखने, तो इफ एट दैट एक्सपोनेंशियल रेट आवर डिमांड इज गोइंग ऑन इंक्रीजिंग, तो at that exponential rate, the number of animals that need access to live, अगर तुम उनको ठूस के पास में भी रख लो, पर अगर हम इतने ज्यादा लोग हैं और इतना सारा डेयरी कंज्यूम करते हैं, तो उतनी जगह चाहिए। पर अगर कॉन्शियसली हम सोचे कि हम अपना डेयरी कैसे रिड्यूस कर सकते हैं, वी आर चेंजिंग द सिस्टम, हम सिस्टम चेंज कर रहे हैं। The entire, this is basic economics. जितना हमारा डिमांड बढ़ेगा उतना हमारा सप्लाई केटर करेगा वो डिमांड के लिए। पर अगर हम टेंजिबली डिमांड रिड्यूस करेंगे, वो सप्लाई जाएगा किधर? The supply will respond. It's an economic system. It will respond. It will go down. And that is how we save the land. Because we're getting less animals into the system. Those animals require less land. You know, and it seems very simplistic, you know, as I'm saying it, but ये है नहीं उतना simple. It's a long-term implementation. It's a long-term solution. The tangibilities will be seen long-term, but it's still solution. It is still impactful.
Yeah, but then people will suggest कि ठीक है, हम दूध पीना बंद कर देते हैं, no problem. Switch to millet milk, oat milk, whatever. But then जो सब गाय हैं वो जाएंगे कहाँ पे? You know?
बेचारे गाय जाएंगे कहाँ
जाएंगे?
अगर आपको सच्ची में गाय की परवाह है, तो आप डेयरी ना कंज्यूम करें। जो जिंदगी वो गाय गुजरती है आपको दूध देने के लिए, वो अनडिस्क्राइबेबली पेनफुल होता है, बहुत दर्दनाक जिंदगी होती है। तो सच्ची में अगर आपको गाय की चिंता है कि ये गाय जाएंगे कहाँ, क्या होगा, वो सिस्टम देख लेगा। दिस इज अगेन इकोनॉमिक्स, दे विल नॉट बी उतने गाय सिस्टम में, धीरे धीरे। एंड लाइक आई सेड, ये कोई इमीडिएट चेंज नहीं होने वाला। अगर ओवरऑल आप जैसे 10, 15, 20 हजार, 2,000 इंडिविजुअल्स स्लोली अपना कंजम्पशन कम करें तो सिस्टम पे इम्पैक्ट होगा। बट इंडिविजुअल एफर्ट डज मैटर इन द लॉन्ग टर्म स्केल ऑफ थिंग्स। तो the number of then cows that will be required to then produce those many liters of milk in a month or a year will substantially reduce. So it's not like हम लोग 100 cows प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं और हम लोग forever 100 cows ही प्रोड्यूस करेंगे। जैसे हमारा काउ का प्रोडक्शन, नंबर ऑफ काउज इन द सिस्टम भी इंक्रीज हुए थे। कैसे इंक्रीज हुए थे? उनको रिप्रोड्यूस करा के इंक्रीज हुए थे। वैसे ही डिक्रीज भी हो सकते हैं। दे विल नॉट रिप्रोड्यूस एज मेनी काउज, बट इट्स अ लॉन्ग टर्म सिस्टम सोल्यूशन, राइट? पर द true heart of the welfare of the cow, if you're thinking about it from bichara cow perspective, is to not consume dairy. There is no other answer.
Something you just said actually about how it's not going to stay 100 cows as the demand increases, so obviously the supply increases. Similarly, it's like when we look at the West, right? जब हम West के बारे में सोचते हैं, we think, oh, you know, it's so amazing in the West and they would treat the animals so nicely and the processes would be so good. You know, in the West, 99% of the meat that you buy is factory farmed.
Yeah.
And maybe people don't know what factory farm means. It's horrifying. It's completely industrialized, systematic. The animals are just treated in the worst possible way you can imagine. Like, I've actually seen a factory farm. I've been inside a factory farm. I've seen what they do. And like in Australia, for example, factory farms are, everywhere. And one of my friends, Chris Delforce, he runs the Farm Transparency Project in Australia, where they break into slaughterhouses and they film what's happening inside. And basically their campaign is shut down 30 slaughterhouses. So they have filmed 30 biggest slaughterhouses in Australia, RSPCA, some of them approved, inside the slaughterhouses. And literally Chris would be there hiding, filming pigs getting in gas chambers, like lowered into gas chambers, killed in the most horrific ways, baby goats killed in the most horrific ways, all systematic.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't think as consumers we may realize that in order to meet the demand, the supply has to be there. And the moment the supply starts increasing, less and less is there a commission for any welfare aspects.
Yeah.
Because you don't have time to worry about the well-being. You can't. They're products, they're numbers, right? Yeah. There's no time for that. So I think it's a very interesting conversation about what does the next 50 to 100 to 200 years look like if from an environmental and an ethical and a health point of view, we need to systematically move out of animal agriculture.
Yeah.
It's not going to be tomorrow, but organizations like HSI, which are educating people about individual change that they can make, and then also helping entrepreneurs with creating products and solutions, I think are really, really critical to a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So as with any systemic change, the roadmap is complicated because there's so many so many stakeholders involved, so much intersectionality. Things get rooted unknowingly, things get rooted into the dialogue of culture and into the dialogue of habit and into the dialogue of, but we've always done it this way. So that behavior shift takes time. Understanding, I think another fundamental thing that we see working on farmed animal welfare is understanding the concept of welfare of an animal that will be consumed or that will be used in a production system is sometimes hard to grasp, which is why there is this sometimes there's this push and pull between pushing for higher animal welfare products like cage-free eggs, or pushing for no eggs at all. And some people look at it as two different movements, but at HSI, we think they both complement each other.
They go hand in hand because, see, we can't flip a switch and tomorrow all the egg production is stopped and we're all vegan now.
Yeah.
That's living in La La Land. That's vegans living in an echo chamber of their WhatsApp group, thinking everyone's going vegan tomorrow. I'm sorry, that's so unrealistic. It's ludicrous. So I think that all of these movements and ideologies do go hand in hand.
Yeah.
The animals that are already in the system, the 80 plus billion animals and however many sea animals that are already in a very effed up system, they need to be looked after.
Yep.
And their whatever little improvements can be made need to be made.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, concurrently, we need to be also shifting our perceptions and our reliance on animal agriculture and how we view animals as having moral personhood.
Yeah.
That also needs to be shifted, but that's going to take time.
Yeah.
Because this argument of we've always done it, the thing is, if we look at human history, we've used this argument for things like slavery or women not having rights to vote and, whites over blacks, whatever.
Yeah.
There's always been but this is our tradition.
Yeah.
But these ideas as we evolve do shift.
Yeah.
But it takes time.
It takes time, yeah.
Even
in India, I think there have been a lot of things that have been rooted in tradition. How certain people from certain communities, like Dalit communities or from marginalized communities, were treated earlier is no longer how we want to as a society or how India wants to treat these communities anymore.
Yeah.
But again, are these people from these communities treated perfectly? No. It's a work in progress. The system takes time to kind of dismantle and remantle itself into something that we believe is more progressive. In the same way, to battle industrialization and this commodification of a living sentient being into just a unit of production, and then therefore completely eliminating its sentience and bringing it down to just a profit margin, dismantling that system is going to take some time. Replacing that with an alternative needs to have some placeholder steps in place, which is where the higher animal welfare products kind of come into place. And then from there, we can continue to move and take step forward. But in parallel, it's very important to understand, if we do not address the sharp increase in the demand for these products, for animal-based products, there is no way any system can incorporate for the well-being of these animals. As you said, there is just so much pressure to produce so much meat, dairy, and eggs that it is impossible for these systems to cater for the fact that these are living beings. The minute we start catering for that, the price of these products goes up. The time taken for us to get these products to market goes up. And that's unacceptable in a country where we are so demand hungry for these products. We're like guzzling them. So if we do not think about a reduction in demand, there is no way we can think about welfare. It's just impossible. So we need to think about this not just, and like I think I've said repeatedly, we can't just think about this from, I can't do it. There is something you can do. If you can't reduce, replace. If you can't replace, refine. Choose better. And if you don't want to do any of these, force somebody else to do it. Make a big company do it for you. You know, if you have that influence and if you have that power, make somebody else do it.
But then I get interesting comments with people who are like, oh, there's so much bigger issues than animals. Like, why are you not caring about children and, third world countries who are being bombed alive? And I'm like, okay, why are we being selective about compassion? It's not like I can only care about one thing. My spectrum of compassion can be extended to everything. Why would I not look at things that way? It's like saying I'll hate a cat and kick it and love the dog. It's like, no, why would I not just love both and give them both equal love? So I find that ludicrous. But I was reading this fact online that vegans or people on a plant-based diet require 58% less medications than people who eat meat and dairy. Why is this? Because nutritionists, you go to any standard nutritionist, सब कहेंगे कि आपको मीट खाना चाहिए, डेयरी खाना चाहिए, एग्स खाना चाहिए हेल्थ के लिए, एनिमल प्रोटीन इंपॉर्टेंट है हेल्थ के लिए, सब कहेंगे ये। तो ऐसा क्यों है कि वीगन्स को कम मेडिकेशन चाहिए देन जो लोग मीट और डेयरी खा रहे हैं?
आई थिंक कि एक तो गवर्नमेंट से पूछना चाहिए क्यों नहीं कर रहे, डेफिनेटली पूछना चाहिए।
एजुकेट क्यों नहीं कर रहे?
क्यों नहीं कर रहे? आई थिंक दिस इज डेफिनेटली अ क्वेश्चन टू पोज टू पॉलिसी मेकर्स। The research is there. The research exists on the tangible benefits that plant-based diets have had. And we also have over many decades now, we've had research published from across various intellectual houses from across the world that have spoken about the positive impact that plant-based diets have had on human health and human performance. We have commercial documentaries out there in the world that are impacting people. Game Changers has been a game changer when it comes to talking about how plant-based diets can affect the physicality of a human being. So the information is there.
Yeah.
It's a question of processing it, taking it in, and seeing how we can make it relevant to the Indian context.
Yeah.
And the people working in food policy, the people regulating food policy, I think, there needs to be more dialogue. There needs to be more engagement to have open and honest conversations about the science that exists. Let's not debate. Let's go into the facts.
That's the thing. There is no debate. It's like science is black and white. And the science has been there for a long time. And we were just talking before about how I read the China study 20 years ago. This information about, and I'm talking about peer-reviewed research, of course, has been there for a really long time. And obviously new research is happening now, but all of this information has been there. The problem is what you just said about policymakers and blah, blah, is that the information, the people who are making these decisions about what information the public knows in terms of what they can have, not have, food pyramid, this, that, it's not coming from a non-biased place. It's coming from a very biased place because half the time these policymakers are influenced by lobbyists, which we know. That's just an undisputable. I'm probably going to get sued by someone else now, but that's just a fact, right? And so I think it's so important that organizations like HSI and individuals ask the right questions and want to share unbiased information, which is factual, so that then people can make educated, informed choices that, my eating this dairy or having this meat is causing massive damage to the environment. Like we know that, for example, a vegan has a 73% less carbon footprint than someone who eats meat or dairy. And 73% is mind-boggling number. But why is it that the Indian government or government bodies are not encouraging people to, or seeing this data and encouraging people to have less dairy, have less meat because of the implications on the environment, which we know are so serious in India?
I think that there needs to be more conversations about this. We need to have environment protection organizations coming onto the table to talk about the impact that consumption of animal products is having on the environment. We need to have Indian environment protection organizations getting into the conversation, right? As much as the global data is powerful and relevant, I think having a voice that stems from the country has more impact. We need multiple stakeholders engaging in animal protection. Animal protection has in India for a very long time been pushed to the fringes of the development sector. I've had multiple years of experience in the development sector, even beyond my work at HSI. And nobody talks about animal protection because also I think the conversation could get misconstrued when we think about last mile empowerment and livelihoods, right? But I think that's exactly why we need to bring people in from who are working in these spaces. If people in the last mile are dependent on animals, I don't necessarily think that their systems of rearing are the problem. I think it's the commercial systems currently that are the biggest problem and have the
Exactly.
biggest impact. So animal protection organizations are not necessarily attacking livelihoods. So I think there has to be a way where we can come on the same table and have these really important conversations about, like I said, bringing the humans and the animals into the same conversation and kind of looking at it ecosystemically and seeing how we can take that forward. And then putting those voices out to the policymakers to say, hey, when we say reduce dairy, when we say reduce animal products, we are not attacking the farmers, we are not attacking the livelihoods. Here is a model that we've created in X village, where we're seeing farmer empowerment, where we're seeing tangible animal welfare outcomes, where we're seeing tangible, measurable environmental impact. I think that could be something great to go to with policymakers with.
Absolutely.
But I think that will require, of course, much stronger dialoguing with government, much stronger intersectional play within the development sector itself.
Absolutely.
And I think that would be a great way forward, actually.
Absolutely. And there's so much scope in India. I feel like India has an opportunity to be the leader of change.
Yeah.
But we just have to be open to that conversation, open to that dialogue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's why the dialogue has to veer away from this all or nothing, right? It's not all animals miserably or no animals at all.
Yeah.
That's not the dialogue we're having.
It's like you have to see it like a transition plan.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like with
Exactly.
anything, it's a transition plan, right?
Yeah.
And I think that point you made is very important, that it's about looking at it from a human animal perspective and having a very clear view that this is the problem and this is how we solve the problem. This is the end point we want to get to, but to get there it's going to take X amount of time, and these are the ways that we can get to that point.
Yeah, and we need stakeholders to come together to build that roadmap. It's not just, and I know this, it's not just going to be the animal protection folks who are going to chart this way forward.
Yeah.
It is going to be people in government. It is going to be people in livelihoods. It is going to be people in environment that are going to come together to build these tangible roadmaps and then scale it.
Yeah. So we know that in animal agriculture, to rear animals as livestock, it uses a lot of resources. And I was actually reading online and I was shocked with this information that by being a vegan, you're actually saving 1.5 million litres of water and over 3,000 kg of CO2 per year just by not eating meat, dairy and eggs. In fact, something like 1 pound of beef is the equivalent to throwing away 40 bathtubs of water. I mean, the resource allocation just seems so inefficient, but then sometimes what happens is that in conversation people will be like, but these facts are Western facts. But I don't see how they're Western facts though, because an animal in India or an animal in the West needs the same inputs.
Yeah.
Food, water, land.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not differing for animal here, animal there.
Yeah.
The same inputs. We just don't measure it in India in the same accuracy or in the same way because there's so many other factors at play, right?
Yeah. I think the real debate comes in is because of the difference in cultural practices when it comes to rearing animals.
I see.
And also, even in the more commercial systems,
Yeah.
the way in which animals are reared in some commercial systems outside of India may be different. I think this is way more relevant to the dairy conversation than anything else.
Yeah.
But for example, if we were to talk about eggs, battery cages are the same everywhere. They're the same everywhere.
Yeah.
Broiler facilities where broiler meat is made,
Yeah.
pretty much the same everywhere.
Yeah.
And you're right, the land, the input, the water,
Yeah.
pretty much the same. It's going to look the same
Yeah.
everywhere. So I think when it comes to that, the data can be translated and you can think about it translatably. But that being said, I think there is a demand, I think, for in-house data, for India specific data.
Absolutely.
So I think that's what we try to do. We look at India relevant patterns. We look at India relevant consumption patterns. But since there is no like specific data when it comes to the the housing systems specifically, if we look at it from a housing system point of view, then the data is accurately translatable. So that's what we do.
Yeah.
We look at it from a housing system perspective.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So if somebody wanted to become a vegan themselves, okay, but they're used to having meat, dairy, and eggs as part of their regular diet, how does someone go from being a non-vegetarian to becoming a vegan without it affecting their health in any negative way?
Yeah, I would say there are experts here who do fantastic work when it comes to enabling your body to move from a nutrition source that it's probably just gotten used to or reliant on to an alternative nutrition source. And this is not a comment on the efficacy of any of these nutritional sources. It's just a process of transition. For example, if if you were going to try to get healthier, you would have to increase your consumption of certain variables and reduce your consumption of others, right? If you want to build more muscle, or you're training for an Ironman or a triathlon, you're not going to eat how you were eating when you were just going to work, coming back, sitting on the couch.
Yeah,
you would transition into figuring out, okay, maybe I need to have more of, these markers need to be higher in my body, these need to be lower. I would say talk to a nutritionist, talk to experts who understand plant-based nutrition, and understand how plant-based nutrition can also be equally good for your body, and work with them to figure out a transition plan that works right for you as an individual. And I know so many people who've just also done it cold turkey, so to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Just up and left everything all at once, and just
me.
And just figured it out.
Yeah.
You just
figure it out along the way. You make some mistakes. But you figure it out along the way.
But if you want to play it cautiously, and if you really do want to take that kind of an approach, I would definitely say work with nutritionists, work with people who have studied this, who've really gotten into the science of it, and not, have done multiple years of understanding how the body works and how plant-based nutrition is absorbed into the body, and work with them. And I think it'll be great.
I think that's a very important point to go with the nutritionist that has actually done the research.
Yeah.
Because the amount of times I've actually come across nutritionists who may not, they come from a very conventional school of thought, like they just go to nutrition school, then they've become a nutritionist. And I've actually been to nutritionists who have told me that I need to start eating meat. Even my friend, she had low blood pressure, and she went to the doctor and he told her that she needs to start eating meat. And that's why her blood pressure is low, which is insane because that has nothing to do with it. She had low BP because she was stressed. And it's concerning when Google is more accurate than your actual health professionals, so many, through my podcast and through so many people I meet so many nutritional professionals that are really not well versed in protein or in basic nutrition. They're just not, and I'm so surprised about this. I had this one nutritionist who, unfortunately, I can't mention her name because I'm too nice, but she was actually going to come on a live debate on one of my podcasts with another nutritionist. And then she messaged me saying, your podcast is too biased, it's not science-based, I'm only science-based, blah, blah. So I was like, please, if you're science-based, I encourage you to come on the podcast and share your science that you have, you know. That's what we want. We want a dialogue talking about it, Anyway, so I went to her page to look at what her science is all about. And basically she's of the notion that human beings cannot be healthy or thrive unless they physically have animal protein. It's a physical requirement. Which I find so fascinating because when we look at the British, American, Australian Dietetics Association, everyone is in agreement that a whole food plant-based diet gives a human being at every stage of life every nutrient they need. So it's non-disputable science, But I think people come in with maybe a biased thought or maybe something they learned at school that they've held on to, but not constantly updating their knowledge or not looking at things beyond their scope of what they think is right and wrong.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I always find it really fascinating how people just assume that it's because somebody is on a plant-based diet that maybe they're not getting enough protein or they're not getting enough of some kind of vitamin or mineral.
Yeah.
But honestly, if I just look at it as a general population, irrespective of what you're eating or what you're avoiding, a lot of people have deficiencies. A lot of people, irrespective of whether they're having meat.
It's modern society.
Yeah.
This is something
It's
I
our
was talking
lifestyle.
about with another nutritionist on my podcast. She was saying that so many meat eaters in India are low in B12.
Yeah.
This is not B12 deficiency. Is not a problem with vegan, non-veg, veg.
Yeah.
It's a modern day problem.
It is.
Because B12 is a bacteria found in soil, and because our soil is not nutrient dense anymore, we're not getting the B12. In fact, the animals are injected and given vitamins of B12. So people will say, I don't want supplements, but the animals are being given the supplements because the soil doesn't have B12 anymore. So you're right. It's a problem to do with just our lifestyles now.
Yeah. And I think, again, that comes back to our food systems.
Yeah.
Right? It's important for us not to necessarily look at what we're eating, but where that food source is coming from. And I think this applies across any ethical or functional diet that you follow.
Sure.
You know, if I have an egg on the table, where is that coming from? What has gone into the process of creating that egg that would give it the complete nutritional profile, so to say, for me or for you or for somebody else?
Yeah.
Right? And we need to look at food systems objectively throughout, be it, and especially I feel in animal agriculture, we need to understand where food is coming from. We are so disconnected from from where we think our meat and our eggs come from. When we think about an egg on our plate, we think about these chickens just kind of like frolicking, scratching the ground in like the grass, and the horrors of a battery cage are like just like from a nightmare. It's from a horror novel.
Yeah.
But it's real.
Yeah.
And then it's not just about the visual of it, right? For an animal to stay alive in these kind of conditions, we need to create, an environment that it can stay alive in, because it's not natural for that animal to be in a cage in such close quarters with each other, being able to kind of peck at each other or infect each other with diseases or anything could happen.
Yeah.
So then what are we doing to keep this petri dish of animals stable for us to get that egg on our plate is what we need to really think about. And of course, if some people are anti-supplements, they're anti-supplements, but I think irrespective of what you eat, there are very few people that have absolutely no deficiencies in today's day and age.
Absolutely.
In today's day
Absolutely.
and age.
You have to be very cognizant, no matter what your diet is, you have to be very cognizant of your nutrients that you're getting, where you're getting them from.
Yeah.
And ensuring that you're eating a wide spectrum of foods that meet your nutrition needs.
Exactly. It's important to constantly be checking in with your body.
Yeah.
To checking in with your health.
Yeah.
To make sure that you're on the right track for yourself, for your goals.
Yeah.
And that can be achieved through a plant-based diet. And
absolutely.
that is definitely possible.
Yeah.
And I think in the day and age where we live in today, it's modern society. So I would be completely okay to have a supplement, something that I may not be having enough of, rather than having an animal be supplemented with something and then given it to me, or an animal being given X amount of antibiotics or X amount of therapeutic, no, anti-therapeutic medication, just so that I can get that egg on my plate.
Yeah, exactly. I get a blood test every 6 to 8 months just to sort of see how I'm going. And I had my protein was a little low. Anyway, so I started working out at the gym, and my trainer was like, we need to increase your protein. Obviously, plus already it's low, but because we're doing muscle building now, we need to increase your protein dramatically. Now, a lot of people, the moment they start seeing a deficiency or they see a problem with their health, I hear from so many people, oh, I went vegan, for a couple of months and then I got a bit sick, so then I went back to eating meat. I hear this all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, you didn't get sick because you went vegan. You may have gotten sick or weak because multiple factors. Maybe you weren't eating the right amount of nutrients. Maybe your body was still adapting. Maybe there's just so many factors that can be at play. Like when I found that my protein was a little low, all I did was increase my protein.
Yeah.
Vegan I'm now more cognizant. So in the morning, I'll have a tofu bhuji instead of just eating some toast.
Yeah.
Immediately 12 grams of protein.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be more mindful to incorporate tempeh, tofu, more legumes, more pulses, more nuts, more seeds. And the culmination at the end of the day, my protein is through the roof.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of being cognizant and making some slight changes, and it's not expensive.
Yeah.
And this is where there's just so many misconceptions in India and everywhere else कि महंगा है. Vegan होना महंगा है. Protein का requirement सिर्फ जानवर से मिलता है. Blah blah blah. So many misconceptions.
Yeah. Vegan महंगा हो सकता है अगर आप सिर्फ alternatives खाओ जो मार्केट में मिलते हैं. बट क्या आप ऐसे खाते हो? अगर आप सोचो आप अपना नॉन वेजिटेरियन में, क्या आप सिर्फ प्रोसेस सॉसेजेस या ये जो अल्ट्रा प्रोसेस जो मीट्स होते हैं आप वो ही खाते हो? नहीं, आप अनप्रोसेस्ड वो सब चीजें लाके घर में पका के वो भी खाते हैं. तो अगर आप अनप्रोसेस्ड होल फूड प्लांट बेस्ड की तरह घर पे आके कुछ बनाते हो अपने आप के
लिए,
वो भी ऑप्शन है आपके लिए, एंड दैट इज डूएबल. आपके बजट में जो दाल है वो खरीदिए. आप टोफू के इतने ऑप्शंस आते हैं,
और पनीर से भी सस्ता है.
टोफू इज समथिंग दैट इज अवेलेबल एवरीवेयर. हर जगह अवेलेबल है. हर आपके वो ऑनलाइन ऐप में अवेलेबल है. तो आपके बजट के हिसाब से आप टोफू खरीदे. जैसे आप अपने बजट के हिसाब से देख के पनीर खरीदते होंगे, सेम आपका बजट देख के टोफू खरीदे. आपके बजट देख के दाल खरीदे. देखिए रेसिपीज, दाल को कैसे हम प्रोसेस करके अलग अलग चीजें बना सकते हैं. मिल्क नाउ हैज बिकम ऑल्टरनेटिव टू द प्लांट बेस्ड मिल्क्स हैव बिकम नाउ सो मच मोर अफोर्डेबल देन व्हेन दे इनिशियली केम इनटू द मार्केट लाइक 20-30 इयर्स अगो. आजकल काफी सस्ते हो गए हैं.
यानी तो आप घर पे भी, मतलब मैंने कोशिश किया है घर पे बनाना. इट इज सो इजी टू मेक मिल्क एट होम. आप कुछ भी चीज़ रागी से बनाओ या ओट से बनाओ या कोई भी चीज़ से बना लो, घर पे बहुत आसानी से बना सकते हो. और मैंने ये भी ट्राई किया है कि घर पे हम पीनट को क्या कहते हैं हिंदी में? मूंगफली. हाँ, मूंगफली से हम कर्ड बना सकते हैं और इतने आसानी से घर पे बना सकते हैं. कितना सस्ता, कितना हेल्थी. आपको पता भी है कि उसमें जा क्या रहा है, और जो उसका टेस्ट है हम तो यूपी के हैं, ऑलराइट. तो हमारे लिए कर्ड खाना इज अ वेरी बिग पार्ट ऑफ आवर कल्चर. एंड द पीनट कर्ड, oh my god, it's so similar to regular dairy based curd, as long as you're adding the prebiotics or probiotics or whatever it is to create that culture. You get that taste, and then you know that where this is coming from, you know that it's affordable, and you know that no animal has suffered to create this.
Absolutely. So I think the point is with veganism especially is it's a lifestyle choice. It's accessible to all lifestyles. You have to make it accessible to your own lifestyle. Veganism is not a one fits all that everybody be vegan in the same way. Everybody is not non-vegetarian in the same way.
And now everyone has to eat avocados and almonds. And that's veganism.
So not everybody consumes animal-based products in the same way.
Same
way, not everybody is going to consume plant-based products in the same way. For some people, it's about, those processed burger buns from burger patties from the store. For others, it's just about, getting like a nice big salad bowl together with a lot of like fresh fruits and vegetables. For others, it could literally look like dal, chawal, roti, sabji. And you can still be mindful of the nutrition that's going into your body, because if you actually think about it, hamara desi khana, right? If we don't think about desi from the sense of ghee dalna hai har cheez mein, but there is so much in our desi khana that's intrinsically vegan. And that's not unaccessible to everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
It is a lifestyle choice that you have to tailor for your lifestyle. It doesn't make it impossible to be healthy. You can fix your budget. You can live within it, like how everybody does.
Yeah, and it's just about knowing, the amount of people that ask me, like, if I'm out with someone and there's like idli sambar or something, they'll be like, "Oh, is this vegan?" I'm like, the fact that we don't know what's in most things, it's like, that knowledge is just lacking, and it's just about, I think when you go vegan, that sort of switch happens, that you become very aware, and for example, take Haldiram's ka Son Papdi, it's vegan. And there's two versions of it. There's the one in the green packet and one in some other packet. And that's just about reading the label.
Yeah.
Oreos are vegan.
Yeah.
So many things that are just kind of normal in everyday context are all really vegan. Perhaps we're just not aware. I'm not saying they're healthy. Just not saying they're healthy. But the fact is that they're accessible and they're vegan. Everyday stuff that, we like to have. Actually, something that I found online, I was reading an article that in New York, over 11 of the hospitals are completely plant-based. And I found this really interesting because, if people are getting sick and then we're telling them to be plant-based, why are we not telling them to be plant-based before they get sick so that they don't get sick? Like the doctors, koi bhi doctor se baat kar lo, obviously meat, dairy, eggs, you have to have it. Nutritionist se baat kar lo, everyone says the same thing.
Yeah.
But then we already know that people are getting sick from having these things.
Yeah.
So why is there so much misinformation out there?
Yeah. I think these conversations are being had in the margins of society still, right? We need to bring these conversations to the mainstream for India.
Yeah.
Right? We've seen that happen across Europe. We're seeing that happen in North America. And that's also why we're seeing that kind of change. The more we push to have these conversations in the mainstream, the more we challenge the existing norms, the more we ask people to do the research, the more we ask people to come up with the facts, and then the more we can have. I think it has to start there. It has to move from the margins to the mainstream.
Yeah.
In fact, very interestingly, we work with hospitals, and we have started getting hospitals to start incorporating plant-based diets in India as well. Yeah, we do that. We work with hospitals to incorporate more plant-based diets into their menus, and to talk about the health benefits of going plant-based.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So speaking of HSI, if I'm an individual in India and I care about the animals, I care about the environment, maybe I want to start a business like the entrepreneurship program you were talking about, how can HSI help me to do more for the animals and the environment?
Wonderful. Okay, there's so many things going on all the time. You should definitely access all of our social media pages. You should be following them because we are really up to date with all of the multiple things happening with all of our different verticals. So because we don't just focus on one specific species, we focus on multiple issues and multiple species. So there's usually something that you can do for any species that you're particularly compassionate about. We have programs running on human-elephant conflict, on human-snake conflict, on farm animal welfare, on increasing, community and stray dog, on reducing community stray dog conflict, increasing sterilization rates for these community animals so that we can live more harmoniously with them. So there's so many ways. And if you're interested in any of this, you can just reach out to our teams. We can direct you to see if you would like to volunteer your time, if you would like to volunteer your services to an organization, to any one of our ongoing programs and projects. We are constantly doing a lot of research work. If you are a researcher and you're interested in any of these intersectionalities, we would love to have conversations with you. Other than that, of course, there's the more quintessential aspects of donating. We are a non-profit and we completely fundraise for all of our work. You can donate directly to our organization. All of our donation related information is on our social media pages, and you'll find multiple campaign specific donations also that you can do in case you want to make a donation to a specific cause. And other than that, I think another way to get involved is to be a voice for animals. If you think anything that we've shared on our social media is interesting, engage with it. Give other people that information. Talk in your communities about animal welfare to the extent that you think is doable by you. There's just so many ways that you can engage with animal welfare and with the work that HSI is doing.
And the program that you were talking about before, the entrepreneurship program. Okay, so let's say I have an idea for some plant-based F&B or just a plant-based idea for something. How does this program help me to maybe get started or do research?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked me that. So we run a mentorship program. Currently, we're focusing on startups that are looking to create alternatives to animal-based products across food materials and non-animal testing. 2024 has been a big food year for us. We've really kind of doubled down and focused on just the food sector. And we're really looking at people who want to get into the manufacturing space or like the white labeling space to try to create and push more SKUs into the market.
Fantastic.
Be it B2B, B2C, where we have the capacities to work with you to create your business models, to work with you to create your pitches, to connect you to investors, to give you that peer body to kind of brainstorm and ideate with of other fellow entrepreneurs who are kind of trying to do this. And also, because we are a global organization, we have access to entrepreneurs from across the globe.
Amazing.
So we're also able to get global entrepreneurs to mentor entrepreneurs here in India to kind of, I hope at least, accelerate the go-to-market for a lot of these companies. And that becomes really important because if we're talking to people to say, you need to have less animal products. And we were talking about the void earlier, right?
Yeah.
It cannot be in that void. So what we're hoping is that by working directly with entrepreneurs and HSI brings this unique expertise of keeping animals in the forefront. So all of our impact metrics are animal focused. So we work with startups that could have tangible impact to animals and a large number of animals.
Fantastic.
Right? So we bring that kind of unique animal protection lens into the entrepreneurship space and are working with entrepreneurs so that they can just launch more SKUs into the market and hopefully reduce the number of animals that are then in production systems.
That's absolutely amazing. So people can just go to the website and apply for this?
So in 2024, we started a new format so that we could be closer to people. We go to the big metropolitan cities and we run boot camps. So we will come to you for the weekend and you can come and work with us. And we give you tools and templates and you can work with coaches and like mentors on the spot to really kind of get your idea refined. And then once we're done running the boot camps, we do, for selected entrepreneurs that move on to the next stage, we do a 1-month intensive hand-holding coaching kind of session to really kind of help you get into the nitty-gritties of your business and get you ready for like this pitch day where we connect you to all of these global and local investors to give you kind of that confidence to put your idea out there in the market or to accelerate your go-to-market.
That's amazing. How wonderful. I hope people connect with that. That sounds incredible. Every 5 years, the Gadhimai festival takes place, which is a mass slaughtering of so many animals, which are being sacrificed, essentially. This takes place in Nepal, and the animals are illegally transported from India to be sacrificed. And I find it beyond comprehension how we're still in a day and age where people believe that they need to sacrifice animals, especially like in such a large volume. Like, why is this happening?
I think we get stuck, like we were talking about, in the we've always done it this way, anecdote. And I can imagine that it must feel scary to not do something that you've been told you need to do or that is vital to your safety for some reason. Right? That being said, I think that there's huge scope for us to have dialogue with communities that feel the need to want to sacrifice animals. and to understand where they're coming from, to talk about how we can make progress, right? Because culture and cultural practices aren't stationary. They don't live in a vacuum. They live in the context of the society that we build, and they live in the context of how human history has progressed. A lot of cultural practices that were practiced many years ago that involve really appalling treatment of women in India, to possibly treating widows in a certain way, or treating women from certain communities in a certain way, or even our caste system. These were all culturally rooted practices. But we've moved forward, and we need to move forward from some cultural practices if they do not fit the context of the society that we feel we want to build. So it's important to look at it from the community's perspective, to understand where they're coming from, but to also build dialogue to see where we can take this forward. Because just because something has been culturally relevant in the past doesn't mean it's still relevant today. And we need to create a system that will allow these communities to move forward from these cultural practices. In Korea, it was culturally relevant to have dog meat for the longest time, but Korean society progressed to a point where Korean people didn't relate to that part of their culture anymore, and now there's a ban on dog meat, which is phenomenal. Right? So culture isn't static. And we need to understand that culture isn't static, but changing anything is hard work. So we really need to roll our sleeves up, be willing to have those difficult conversations with people who think very differently from possibly vegans, especially do, and understand where they're coming from, and build spaces of commonality that we can at least start charting some progress.
Absolutely, because people actually see it as a personal attack. And I speak to a lot of people who might be from specific religious communities, whether it's from an Islamic community or anything like that, especially if we've spoken about the sacrifice of goats during Eid, and we basically break it down for what it is. And if we suggest that it's not necessary because Eid is about giving charity, you can still give charity in a different way. You don't necessarily have to sacrifice the goat. What will end up happening is a number of people from the community will be so offended that we're attacking their culture. But it's not about attacking their culture. It's about, as humans, we evolve. As we learn more information, we can interpret and make better choices while still paying homage to our cultural beliefs.
Absolutely.
But we don't need to be doing, as you said, what we've always done. And that's part of not having ego and being open to change. And that, as you said, is the hardest thing, is people being open to change. And how do you change those mindsets without people feeling attacked?
Exactly.
That's the question.
I really like how you sum that up. And I think for me, the biggest takeaway today has been conversations, difficult conversations, intersectional conversations. Bring people on the table, people from marginalized communities, people who don't have the voice or do have the voice and have a very loud voice that scares us or that angers us. Bring everybody on the table and have dialogue to see what paths can be charted forward where. It's not always going to be possible.
Exactly.
It's not always going to make everybody happy. But I think that could make it powerful. It could definitely make it more powerful.
Absolutely.
And, I completely agree that India is just bursting with, so many different expressions of religion and belief and culture. But from my experience, truly none of these religions or cultural expressions advocate for cruelty. They all advocate for compassion, and deep compassion, not just towards other human beings, but also towards animals. It's an interpretation of how we express and how we're thinking about what is being said and how we choose to kind of express that. So, and that is why I say that this has to evolve. It's an evolutionary process because it has to evolve with us. Our interpretation and our expression of our culture and our religious beliefs need to evolve with us.
Yeah.
And again,
Exactly.
to do that needs to involve a lot of coming together.
Yeah.
And being
Exactly.
okay with having those really difficult conversations.
Absolutely. I mean, I generally avoid having any religious commentary because I'm not, I don't align with any organized religion. But from my very common sense, maybe perspective, maybe it's just me being just too logical. The way I see it, I'm like, well, if you believe in a God, then surely you would think that he or she is just. And if someone is just, then they would not want to inflict pain and suffering when they don't need to. And to me, it's that black and white, right? And maybe that's a very simplistic view of looking at things, but, you know, I would not imagine that any religion would advocate for harm when there doesn't need to be.
Yeah, I don't think it's a simplistic way of looking at it. It's there in our Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, in fact, where we must avoid unnecessary pain and suffering to any animal.
Yeah.
And it's in our law.
And that's the key word, unnecessary.
Yeah.
Because for most of us, we live in environments where we have a choice. And this is where things get dicey because, you know, people are like, yeah, but I need to have it, or I have to have it, or there's no other choice. I'm like, no, most of us have a choice. We're not living in coastal communities or SR that we have to have XYZ things. Most of us have choice.
Most of us do.
Yeah.
Most of us have the power to make a choice, and
Yeah.
we have that autonomy.
Yeah,
We should.
exactly. So what is a single thing that an everyday Indian can do to help animals and help the environment?
That's a tough one. One single thing. I would say reflect on your life. Reflect on the life choices that you make. And start with the path of least resistance for yourself and make those changes. For example, I don't eat meat, but I love pizza. You know, I can't live without pizza. Okay. Don't give up pizza. Give up all other forms of dairy. Start there. Start with the path of least resistance. Are you addicted to your chai? Don't give up the chai. Give up everything else. Give up the process, like give up the cakes, give up the desserts, give up what you don't really care about. If you don't have a sweet tooth, give up the desserts.
Yeah.
That's reducing your impact. Next time it's your birthday and you don't really care about the cake that much, or if it doesn't really matter to you, get the vegan cake. You know, increase the demand for that. Host a vegan party, maybe, if that's okay with you. What works for you? I think really reflect on what works for you. Are you somebody who really loves your meat and doesn't care about like the cheese? Then give up everything but the meat. Give up everything but the chicken. Maybe you only eat chicken and you don't really care about the desserts and the cheese pizza and stuff like that. So give the rest of it up. Find that path of least resistance for you and walk on that journey. And I think veganuary is a great way for you to experiment and figure out what is that path of least resistance for you. You know, it's a month long. I think it's almost like vegan festivities, right? There are vegan pages exploding all over the place, talking about interesting recipes, how you can do things at home, where you can go out to eat that's vegan friendly. Use that kind of momentum to get yourself going and try different things. Figure out that path of least resistance for you. Maybe through a recommendation, you found a chai wala who does like fantastic plant-based or like oat milk chai, and you're like, I'm done. I can just figure out this and I'm good without the dairy, you know, and that's impactful. That's tangible change. So use these opportunities that come your way to see how you can reflect on yourself and your life choices. And do the easiest thing. Don't do the most difficult thing and say, I can't do this and it's impossible. Do the easiest thing and then try to stick to it.
I agree with you. I think it's reflecting on your core values. And if your core values suggest that you're not comfortable with, let's say, for example, hurting animals, then we can easily ascertain that by consuming animal products, you're hurting animals. So by partaking in something like veganuary, it's a great way to try being vegan for 30 days with support from other people. and then it might work for you. You might be like, shit, this is great, you know? Or you might walk out of it going, you know what, I'm happy to be 90% vegan and, 10% here and there. It's a great way for you to try and start instigating change. So I think you're right that reflecting is a wonderful first step. Yeah. Speaking of which, I found this like crazy this crazy fact that I wanted to share with you, because we've been talking so much about the environment and the implications of animal agriculture. So I was reading online that giving up one portion of meat once a week for a year saves nearly 790 bathtubs of water, 3 tennis courts of forests, and the equivalent amount of greenhouse gases as driving from London to Edinburgh. That's just giving up one portion of meat once a week for a year.
Wow, that's substantial.
That's like mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Because when we break it down into numbers like that and we realize that our individual choices, small choices that we make, have such a big impact on the environment.
Yeah.
And we're struggling with climate change right now. And just by making small changes, all of us, if we made a little small change, imagine the impact.
It's truly remarkable how sometimes the individual feels insignificant.
Yeah.
But the individual can contribute so much to make such a significant impact over a period of time or within a coalition of other people.
Exactly.
Right? So maybe you and 5 friends decide that you want to do this together, and then you can think about like measuring your impact, and it's going to be so substantial.
Yeah, exactly.
And I really loved how you spoke about it in percentages earlier. It's not about being vegan. You don't have to be a perfect vegan. You don't have to be 100% there. You can start by being one meal, 2 meals. And this is exactly the work that we do with institutions. We say, hey, do you want to go 1 day a week plant-based? Do you want to do lunches plant-based? Do you maybe want to do just your chai, like your teas are all plant-based?
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many ways in which you can integrate, reduce your impact and integrate more plant-based options into your lifestyle. And that still can have such a significant impact. So it's never all or nothing. Every step that you take towards reducing the consumption of animal products significantly contributes to your environmental impact as an individual. And when you look at yourself as an individual in a network of other individuals, you can influence each other.
Absolutely.
So your decisions, if your individual decisions can impact the climate, you can impact the network around you.
Yeah.
And it does matter.
Absolutely. Sometimes though you'll come across vegans who do have a position of it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
And the problem with that though is that does put off most people.
Yeah.
And that's not a realistic way to approach things, because then I could also argue that to a purist vegan, that, well, then you can never go on a plane or you can never use a mobile device because there's animal products that have been used to create these things or animals have been tested on to create these things, right? So where do you draw the line then with your morality?
Yeah.
So we all have to be a little realistic that if we're living in the modern world, we can't put the same basis on everyone.
Yeah.
And we might come in with the right intention that we do want to stop using animals. We do want to improve the world and fix the environment and fix everything. But it's not one shoe fits all. And I think that's the best way to look at things. And it's great the work that you guys are doing. I hope more people listening to this get involved, join the program, volunteer. I really appreciate you joining me and chatting to me today. I've learned a lot through our conversation.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I love talking about this type of work, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to showcase a little bit of what we do for animals.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I encourage everyone to please join Veganuary, 30 days in January. Try to be vegan if you can, as much as you can.
Make it fun.
Make it fun. Have fun with it. That's what it's all about. I've certainly learned going vegan that my palate of food has increased substantially from when I used to eat meat. So it's nothing but fun.
Yeah.
So enjoy Veganuary. Thank you so much, Shreya. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.